Okay, so for our next technique, we're going to do what I call basic dipping and blending. There's probably a better name for it, but that's what I'm going to go with. We're going to use the tumbled glass and the picked raspberry. So what you're going to do is first rub 2 or 3 distress ink pads onto the non-stick craft sheet, and be careful not to overlap them. And you can see we've got ink right on the craft sheet. Then take a mini mister and squirt with water. Quite a bit of water. You want to really see it beating up. And then take your blank tag and just dip it down into it. Swirl it around a little bit and lift it up, and ooh, isn't that pretty already? So you may like this, you may not. Personally, I don't like that the blue's not showing very much, so I'm going to go ahead and dry this with my heat tool, and then we're going to dip again. So I'll be right back. So I'm back, and here's my tag all dried, and like I mentioned, I don't like that there's not very much blue showing. So I'm going to go ahead and dip it down into the blue a little bit more. And now you can see some of the blues coming to life a little bit more. It's subtle, but it's still there. So I'm going to go ahead and dry that. You can let it dry naturally by itself, but I'm not very patient, so I'm going to go ahead and use my heat gun to get it all dry. Now again, if maybe you didn't like this color and think that it's just not dark enough at all, you could go in with a different color and see if that might work better. So I'm going to wipe off some of what I've created here already and try another color. This happens to be peacock feathers. And I'm going to put that down on the craft sheet, spritz it with my water, and try dipping this portion of the tag down into that and see how it looks. I'm going to do a couple of the other edges too. Ooh, that looks really neat. So the other thing you can do now to get it a little bit moister is spritz it with a little bit more water and watch it really react and run together, which is really a really cool thing about the distress inks, because they blend so nicely and they react to water, so you can get some cool effects. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this and show you how it turned out. So I'm back, and here's the tag all dry with a little help from my heat gun. And doesn't it look cool? I just love the way the colors blend together when you use this technique. Now I don't ever like to just wipe this up and waste it, so I might do another tag while I have it. The other thing you can do is use it on fibers. So here's a piece of lace, and I'm just going to kind of dip it around and roll it around, and you can get your lace dyed. You can use ribbon, you can use twill tape, and it's just good to have things like this around. Even if you're not going to use them on this particular project, then you have them when you need them, and you're not wasting the ink. Now say I had all this peacock color here, which is really pretty, but maybe I want to blend a little bit of that picked raspberry. So I just wiped up the surface, and I'm going to apply a little bit more down, and again spritz it with the mini mister. And I think this lace would be pretty with a little bit of pink blended in. Ooh, like that. And same with this ribbon. Gives a little more interest when we have the multicolors on it. And I can do the same with the twill tape I was showing you. Isn't this fun? Now I probably go back with some more blue or a different color on that one. So there's some things that you can do with your pile of ink while you have it there. So with this basic dipping and blending technique, as I call it, there's another alternative to using the mini mister with water that I think is kind of fun. So this time I'm going to use some seedless preserves. Get quite a bit of it on there. And I'm going to use spice marmalade. Don't you love the names of these? They're so much fun. And instead of using water, I'm going to use Perfect Pearl Mist instead. This happens to be the Perfect Pearl color, which is nice and shimmery. So now, instead of using the water and getting a nice blended background, we're using the Perfect Pearl Mist, so you're going to get more of a pearly, shiny background in the color. Ooh, even look at the way it moves. That's so fun. And you might not be able to see it when it's wet, but really when it's dry, you're really going to notice how shimmery that is. So let's dry it and take a look. So here's the finished tag. And I don't know if you can see from the camera, but it's nice and shimmery and pretty. And I just love that background and how it turned out. Next, you might be asking, okay, so I've got these great backgrounds I created. What do I do next? One thing you can do is you can use a paper distresser like this one and rough up the edges so you're getting even more of a distressed look. That's kind of fun, and you can ink over again because sometimes the color of the cardstock or the tag that you're using will show through and you want it to look distressed. So after you do this, you might want to go back and re-ink the edges. The other fun thing you can do is you can spritz the tag with water. So here's one that we did. And if you spritz it with water, it's going to start taking on a completely different look, which is kind of cool. See how the water just starts blending the colors together. Here's another tag I did, and it's got the shabby shutters on this side and weathered wood on this side. And instead of just spraying the water directly onto it, excuse my inky fingers, I'm gonna put the ink in my hand, or the water, excuse me, in my hand, and I'm just gonna drop some drops down onto it. And what's going to happen is the water is going to start lightening the portions of the tag where I've dropped it on there. And if I want, I can even make it drip down, and you'll see how it lightened where I first dropped the water, and now you can see it dripping and blending down, which is kind of a cool effect. So now the next thing you're going to want to do to some of the backgrounds you created is you might want to start stamping on them. It's fun to start using maybe the same color you used when you blended and add just a little bit of stamping around the edges. This is just kind of a little dot distress stamp from Tim Holtz. Here's another stamp from Tim Holtz that I really like. I think it's supposed to look like rings of some sort of like coffee stain. You add a little bit there. And then you might want a darker stamp for the image. So this time I'm using the Jet Black Archival from Ranger. This is my go-to ink because it's permanent and I always get a really good impression when I use it. So isn't that fun? I might want to stamp a word and do some other stuff, but that's a start for something that's going to be very creative and fun. Now I'd like to show you some of the things that I've created or I'm working on using those two basic blending techniques we've done today. Here's just a little tag. I've just added some stamping over the tag. This was a background done with the dipping and blending technique with water. Here's another little tag. I've added some distressed crackle paint in the corners and some distressed stickles, which is fun, and just stamped around. Here's another one, just added stamps right on top. This is like the first technique we did, and I roughed up the edges. In addition to using the antique linen, vintage photo, and black soot, I also used some walnut stain in there too, so there's actually 4 inks in the background. Here's another one I did the same way with the 4 inks in the background. Here's another tag, the little birds, done with a die cut and grunge board, and it was also ran through the Cuttlebug with an embossing folder, so it's got some texture. I also added some stickles on the side, some stamps. This is actually done, this one up here, with embossing powder, the distress embossing powder. Here's another tag that's kind of fun. This is a metal charm from the Tim Holtz collection, and I actually colored him using alcohol inks and a chain that I also used alcohol inks. Here's some tissue tape, some stickles, and some stamps. And instead of using ribbon this time, I actually used the tissue tape to make a little ribbon, so I thought that was kind of a fun look. I'm not done with this, but it's a start. Here's a tag I did and then used it on a background for a card. And then the last thing I want to show you is this little tag book I'm working on. And this is basically all distress products, distress inks. And how fun is this? Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember, you can use these distress techniques not just on tags and cardstock, but on patterned paper, on canvas, on art journals, on all sorts of things.